The stars blurred into streaks of white fire as Captain Elias Kane fought to keep his starfighter under control. Warning lights flashed across his display. Alarms screamed and the controls shuddered in his hands. Plasma smoke curled from the left engine, leaving a trail across the endless night of space. He had survived worse battles before, but this time he knew his ship was done for. The enemy raid had caught him alone, far from the safety of his fleet. He had managed to fight them off, but not without a price. His starfighter was breaking apart. "Come on, stay together just a little longer," Elias muttered, wrestling the stick. But the ship answered with a burst of sparks. The starboard wing tore away, vanishing into the void. A second later, the emergency system screamed the word he dreaded: eject. Elias did not hesitate. With one sharp pull, the cockpit canopy blasted away, and his seat catapulted into the darkness. His body slammed against the restraints as he was hurled free, the burning wreck of his fighter spinning below him. Moments later, his escape pod sealed around him, protecting him from the killing cold of space. Through the small viewport, he saw the planet below, a jewel of green and violet. Thick forests covered its surface, broken by rivers of shining silver. Clouds swirled in vast spirals, glowing faintly under the light of a golden sun. "That's where we're going," he whispered. Gravity took hold, dragging the pod down. Flames licked at the edges as it roared into the atmosphere. The violent shaking nearly knocked him unconscious, but Elias gritted his teeth and held on. He had lived through dozens of close calls in his career. He wasn't going to let this be his last. The pod smashed into the ground with a bone-rattling crash. Dirt and broken plants sprayed high into the air. The shock nearly crushed him, but then at last silence fell. Only the ticking of cooling metal filled the air. Elias forced himself to breathe. He was alive. That was enough for now. Slowly he unstrapped himself and shoved the hatch open. Fresh air rushed in, warm, heavy, and filled with the scent of strange flowers. He climbed out and staggered onto the soft soil. His body ached from the impact, but he could still stand. He looked around. Towering trees with broad violet leaves loomed overhead. Their branches shimmered faintly as though reflecting starlight, even under the sun. Insects with wings like glass hummed in the air. Strange animals watched him from the undergrowth. Creatures with 4 legs, fur that glowed faintly, and wide, curious eyes. This place. "It's alive," Elias murmured. "Too alive." He gathered supplies from the pod, a survival pack, a beacon, and his sidearm. His first thought was to contact his fleet, but when he powered the beacon, no signal reached orbit. The sky was thick with interference. If he wanted to be rescued, he would need to survive long enough for them to find him. Elias began walking, keeping his weapon ready. Every sound in the forest made him tense. Yet as he moved deeper, he noticed something stranger than the creatures or plants. The trees bore scars. Not natural ones. Long slashes as though made by blades. Then he heard it, the clash of steel. Elias crouched, moving toward the sound. Through the trees he saw a wide clearing. And there, under the sun, 2 figures fought. They were women. Both tall, both armored, their forms strong and lithe. Their weapons shone as they clashed, moving faster than his eyes could follow. Each strike rang like thunder, each step shook the ground. Elias stared in shock. These were no ordinary fighters. Their combat was ritualistic, almost like a dance. Sparks flew as they locked blades, pushing against each other with roaring cries. Finally, one woman fell. The victor raised her weapon high, shouting words in a language Elias did not know. Around the edges of the clearing, others cheered. A circle of warriors, all women, clad in similar armor. Elias's heart pounded. He had found civilization. But what kind of civilization? He stepped back carefully, but the ground betrayed him. A branch snapped under his boot. The sound carried across the clearing. Every head turned toward him. Elias froze. The victorious warrior pointed her weapon. The circle of women closed in, their eyes fixed on him. They were not surprised, they were shocked. Some whispered, some gasped as if they had seen a ghost. Elias raised his hands slowly. "Wait, I'm not here to fight." They did not understand his words, but they understood his tone. 2 warriors rushed him. Before he could move, they seized his arms with iron grips and dragged him forward. Elias struggled for a moment, but realized resistance was useless. Their strength was beyond human. They brought him to the center of the clearing. The victorious warrior stepped forward. Her eyes were bright gold, her face fierce yet striking. She studied him closely as if trying to decide if he was real. Her voice rang clear, commanding silence among the others. She spoke a single word, pointing at him. The warriors erupted in whispers. Elias could not understand their language, but the way they stared at him told him everything. They had never seen a man before. The warriors bound his wrists with glowing cords and marched him through the forest. Elias stayed calm, but his mind raced. An entire society of women, fighting in ritual duels, living without men. How long had it been this way, and why? They brought him into their settlement, a great city of stone towers and bridges strung between massive trees. Fires burned in open pits, warriors trained in courtyards, sparring with blades and spears. Children watched wide-eyed as Elias passed, pointing and whispering. The people here looked strong, proud, and organized. Yet their eyes carried awe, fear, and suspicion when they looked at him. Finally, they dragged him into a hall carved from living wood. At its center stood a throne, and on it sat a woman taller than all the rest. Her armor was black and silver, her crown formed of sharp crystal. Her gaze burned like fire, steady and unyielding. Elias knew at once this was their queen. The warrior shoved him to his knees. The queen rose slowly, each step echoing through the hall. She circled him once, studying him as one might study a rare beast. Then she spoke, her voice deep and commanding. The crowd hushed. Elias could not understand her words, but he understood her presence. She was not asking who he was. She was declaring what he would become. For the first time since his crash, Elias felt true danger. Not from beasts, not from battle, but from the will of a ruler who saw him not as a guest, but as a claim, and though he did not yet know her name, one thing became clear. The undefeated queen of this world had just decided his fate. Elias Kane had faced death more times than he could count. He had looked into the eyes of enemies, fought in the silence of space, and survived crashes before. But never in his life had he felt such a heavy weight as he did now, kneeling on the polished floor of the great hall. The women around him stood tall, silent, and watchful. Their armor gleamed like living metal. Their weapons rested against their sides, ready if he made a wrong move. The queen, the one who had risen from her throne, was the center of all attention. Her name was spoken in whispers around him. He heard it repeated again and again, Serenia. The sound of it carried both respect and fear. Serenia the unyielding, the undefeated queen of this world. She walked with calm power, circling Elias as if she were measuring him, as if she were deciding whether to break him or protect him. Elias kept his eyes steady, though his heart pounded. He knew enough from long service in the fleet. Never show weakness before rulers, even if you are bound. Serenia raised her hand. The cords that bound his wrists loosened and fell away as though obeying her command. She spoke, her voice sharp, each word like a blade. Elias could not understand her language, but he understood her tone. She was testing him. He rose slowly, not wanting to appear weak. He stood tall before her, though he was still shorter by a head. A murmur ran through the hall. The warriors shifted, some with narrowed eyes, others with awe. Elias realized that even his height, his build, his very presence was unusual here. The queen stopped in front of him. For a moment, her golden eyes studied his face. Then, to his surprise, she reached forward and touched his chest, lightly, almost with curiosity. Elias flinched, but did not pull away. "Human," he said softly, pointing at himself. "Elias Kane." The hall grew quiet. Serenia tilted her head. Then she repeated the sound slowly, carefully, "Eat," as her warriors echoed it. Elias. It was the first bridge built between them. The queen did not order his death. Instead, Elias was taken to a chamber high in one of the towers. It was not a prison exactly, but neither was it freedom. Guards stood outside at all hours. From the window he could see the city. Great bridges spanned from tower to tower, lined with banners that shimmered in the wind. Warriors trained in courtyards below, their weapons flashing like lightning. Markets bustled with life, stalls filled with fruits, shining minerals, and strange glowing devices. Children ran between the legs of armored women, laughing. Elias began to understand. This was not a land of savages. It was a civilization, different, strange, but highly organized. And at the heart of it stood Serenia. On the second day, he was brought before the queen again. This time, not in the great hall, but in a training ground. Serenia herself faced him, holding a wooden practice staff. Elias blinked. "You want me to fight?" She gestured firmly. Then she tossed a second staff at his feet. Elias picked it up. He had trained with many weapons before, though mostly blasters and blades, not simple sticks. Still, he understood the meaning of this. She wanted to test him. Not as a prisoner. As a warrior, they circled each other. Serena's stance was low, balanced, controlled. Elias mirrored her as best he could. The first strike came fast, too fast. Her staff cracked against his side before he even raised his weapon. The impact knocked him to the ground, breath rushing from his lungs. The watching warriors laughed, though not cruelly. Serena waited. Her eyes challenged him to rise. Elias gritted his teeth and stood again. "All right, let's try that again." The second time, he blocked. The wood shuddered in his hands as her blow landed. She was strong, stronger than any human he had met, but he had speed and adaptability. He let her strike, stepped aside, and used her own force to push back. This time she stumbled a half step. The warriors gasped. Serena's eyes lit with something new, interest. For nearly an hour they sparred. Elias lost more often than he won, but each time he lasted longer. Each time his movements grew sharper. By the end he was standing covered in sweat, bruised but grinning. Serena lowered her staff and nodded once. Respect. It was a silent message. He was not only a curiosity, he was worthy of being tested. Over the following days, Elias learned more of their culture. Through gestures, drawings, and patient exchange of words, he began to understand their language. The Veerans, as they called themselves, were a warrior people. They lived by strength and honor, but not chaos. Their entire society was built on trials. Every dispute, from leadership to personal matters, was settled by combat. Warriors challenged each other in duels, not to the death but to submission. Even the right to choose mates was fought for. This stunned Elias. In his world, love was personal, chosen freely. But here, choice was proved through battle. The strongest claimed, the weaker yielded, and for centuries there had been no men. Elias learned this from a woman named Kaylin, one of Serena's advisors. She spoke the human tongue slowly, carefully after hearing him repeat words again and again. The skyfire, she explained, pointing upward. Long ago, men gone. Only women remain. Elias pieced it together. Some catastrophe, perhaps a disease or war, had wiped out the male population generations ago. The society had endured, adapted, and thrived without them. And now his arrival had shattered their balance. Word of Elias spread across the city like fire. Crowds gathered just to see him walk through the courtyards. Some reached out to touch his hand, whispering prayers. Others looked with suspicion, muttering warnings. Factions formed quickly. Some believed he was a gift from the stars, a chance to restore what was lost. Others believed he was a danger that would divide them. At the center of it stood Serena. The queen declared before her council that Elias was under her claim. Not as a prize, not as a servant, but under her protection. This stirred outrage. Rival houses rose in protest. They accused Serena of using him to strengthen her own rule. One counselor shouted, "If the man is to stay, he must be won by trial, as all things are won." The hall erupted in agreement. Serena's golden eyes narrowed. She stood, her armor gleaming. "Then let it be so. Any who wish to claim him must first defeat me." A silence fell. No one had defeated Serena in years. She was undefeated, unmatched, unyielding. Her title was not only a crown but a warning. Yet the hunger in the eyes of her rivals could not be hidden. Elias saw it clearly. To them he was not a man. He was power. He was the key to changing the balance of their world. That night, Elias sat alone in his chamber, staring out at the glowing forests. He felt the weight of their stares, their judgment, their plans. He whispered to himself, "I didn't ask for this," but deep down he knew the truth. Whether he wanted it or not, his presence had set something in motion. A storm was coming, and at the heart of it stood Serena, the queen who had claimed him before all others. The next day the city prepared for the trials. Banners hung from the towers. Drums echoed through the streets. Warriors sharpened their blades and donned their armor. Elias watched from the high balcony as thousands gathered. He saw Serena in the arena below, her presence commanding, her voice carrying over the crowd. She raised her weapon high, declaring her right, and one by one, challengers stepped forward. The first battle was about to begin, and Elias, though only a bystander, knew this was not just about him. This was about the future of an entire world. The arena was alive with sound. From the highest balconies to the lowest stone benches, warriors of every house filled the seats. Drums boomed like thunder. Flags of red, green, silver, and black rippled in the wind. The crowd shouted the queen's name again and again. Serenia! 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 Elias Kane stood at the edge of it all, guarded by 2 armored sentinels. His wrists were free, but his position was clear. He was not a fighter in this trial. He was the reason for it. The prize. The spark that had lit this fire. His stomach twisted. He had been trained for battles, but not this. To watch people fight not for survival, but for the right to decide his fate. It unsettled him deeply. Still, there was no turning away. At the center of the arena stood Serenia the Unyielding. Her armor shone black and silver, her golden eyes blazing with the fire of command. She held a long spear, the weapon of queens, and rested its blade against the ground as she waited. When the drums stopped, the first challenger entered. She was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried twin curved blades. Her armor bore the crest of House Vael, a rival clan that had long envied Serenia's rule. The crowd cheered her name, Koresh. Koresh pointed one blade toward Serenia and then toward Elias, who stood under guard. She shouted words Elias now understood well enough. The man must not be hers alone. He belongs to all of Veara. If Serenia claims him, she claims more than a mate. She claims our future. The crowd roared in agreement. Others hissed and jeered. Serenia did not answer with words. She lifted her spear, her expression calm and certain. The queen needed no speeches. Her blade spoke for her. The gong sounded. Koresh rushed forward, blades flashing like silver arcs. Serenia spun her spear, deflecting the first strike with a clang that echoed across the arena. Sparks burst from the clash. Elias's heart pounded. He had seen fighters in the fleet, but nothing like this. Serenia moved with perfect control. Every step measured, every strike precise. Koresh was fierce, fast, brutal, but Serenia was unshakable. The duel raged across the arena. Spears clashed against blades, armor rang with heavy blows. Dust rose as they moved, circling, striking, blocking, countering. Then Serenia saw her chance. She twisted her spear, hooked one of Koresh's blades, and with a powerful kick sent the rival warrior sprawling. The crowd gasped. Koresh struggled to rise, but Serenia's spear tip was already at her throat. The trial was over. Koresh dropped her remaining blade and bowed her head in defeat. The arena erupted in cheers. Serenia lowered her spear, offering respect even in victory. Elias released a breath he had not realized he was holding. He had doubted just for a moment whether she could truly remain undefeated. Now he understood. She was not only a queen, she was the embodiment of strength itself. But that was only the first trial. One by one, challengers came. Some with axes, some with spears, others with whips that cracked like lightning. Each had trained their entire lives for this. Each wanted the honor of claiming the strange man from the stars. And one by one, Serenia defeated them. She did not win by chance or luck. She won by discipline, skill, and sheer determination. Each battle told Elias something new about her. She was not ruthless. She spared her rivals when she could. She was not arrogant. She bowed to worthy opponents. And she was not reckless. She fought with the patience of someone who knew time was on her side. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, shadows stretching across the arena floor. Still, Serenia stood undefeated, yet Elias noticed something. Though she remained strong, her movements slowed just slightly. Sweat shone on her brow. Her breathing grew heavier. Even the strongest warrior had limits, and her greatest challenger had not yet arrived. The final challenger stepped into the arena as the drums fell silent once more. She was younger than Serenia, but taller, her armor shining white and blue. Her weapon was a massive hammer, glowing faintly with strange energy. The crowd hushed as she raised it high. Her name was Vela, leader of House Dren. She had long opposed Serenia in council, but had never dared challenge her in open combat, until now. Her voice carried across the arena. The queen hides behind her victories, but she is still flesh and blood. Today I will break her. The man will not be hers to keep. He will belong to the future of us all. The crowd trembled with excitement. Elias leaned forward, fists clenched. He did not want Serenia to lose, not because he wished to be her possession, but because he knew what would happen if she fell. Vela's words revealed her intent. To her, he was not a person, but a weapon. The gong sounded. Vela charged, her hammer slamming into the ground with explosive force. Stone cracked, dust flew. Serenia barely leapt aside, rolling across the dirt before rising. Her spear darted forward, but Vela swung her hammer in a wide arc, forcing Serenia back. The duel was different from the others. This was not a contest of speed or skill alone. This was raw power against control. Blow after blow shook the arena. Each time Vela struck, the ground cracked. Each time Serenia countered, her spear flashed like lightning, keeping her rival at bay. Elias felt sweat on his palms. His mind screamed at him to do something, but he could not. This was their law, their trial. His voice would mean nothing here. Minutes dragged into what felt like hours. Serenia's defenses weakened. A hammer strike grazed her shoulder, tearing her armor. Another blow forced her to one knee. The crowd roared, some in support of Serenia, others calling for her defeat. Elias's heart hammered in his chest. He wanted to shout, to run into the arena, to stand beside her. But he knew that would dishonor her. She had chosen this. She had chosen to fight for him. At last, Serenia rose again, her spear steady though her body trembled. Her golden eyes burned with fire. Vela raised her hammer high for the final strike. Elias whispered under his breath, "Come on, Queen. Don't give up." The hammer fell. Serenia moved like a shadow. At the last instant, she stepped aside, letting the hammer crash into the stone. The impact shook the arena, but it also left Vela exposed. With a cry that echoed through the sky, Serenia thrust her spear forward. It struck Vela's chest plate with enough force to knock her backward, the hammer falling from her grip. Vela collapsed, gasping for breath, her weapon lying in the dust. The arena went silent. Then it erupted into thunderous cheers. Serenia, though bruised and battered, stood tall once more. She lifted her spear high, declaring victory. Elias felt relief flood through him. His chest ached as though he had fought beside her. The undefeated queen remained undefeated. That night the city celebrated. Fires burned in the courtyards. Music filled the air. Warriors danced and sang songs of their queen's triumph. But Elias noticed something different. Wherever he walked, eyes followed him, not just with awe, but with new weight. He was no longer just a stranger. He was the reason for a battle that had shaken the heart of their people. Later, Serenia summoned him to her private chamber. She had changed from armor into simpler robes, though even now she looked every bit a queen. She spoke slowly, carefully, using words he had taught her. "You see now why I claim you." Elias looked at her, searching for the truth in her eyes. "You don't want me as a prize," he said quietly. "You want to protect me?" Serenia nodded once. "Others would use you. Not see you. I will not allow it." There was silence between them, broken only by the sound of the fire crackling nearby. For the first time, Elias saw not just the queen, not just the warrior, but the woman beneath. She was not unbreakable. She carried the weight of her people, the burden of leadership, the endless expectation to remain undefeated, and now she carried him as well. Yet even as the queen rested, danger brewed beyond the city walls. From the dark edges of the forests, far from the fire-lit towers, shadows moved. Strange figures cloaked in black armor watched the city with hungry eyes. One whispered in a language older than Vayara itself. "The man is here. The last piece. We will take him and our curse will be broken." The real trial had only just begun. The city of Vayara glowed under the twin moons. Towers rose like blades of stone. Bridges shimmered with lantern fire, and songs of celebration echoed through the night. The queen had won. Serenia the Unyielding remained undefeated. But while the city sang, Elias Kane could not rest. He stood on a balcony high above the courtyards, the cool night air brushing against his face. Below, warriors feasted, laughing and drinking. Yet his eyes kept straying to the horizon, the dark line of the forests where shadows hid secrets. He had lived long enough as a soldier to know victory songs could be short-lived. The quiet after celebration was when danger liked to strike. Inside the queen's chamber, Serenia met with her closest counselors. The chamber was lit by fire pits and carved with symbols of past rulers. Her armor lay set aside, replaced with robes of deep crimson. Kalen, her advisor, leaned close and whispered, "The trials have ended, but not the strife. The houses will not rest. Some will wait for weakness. Some will plot in secret. The man's presence has changed everything." Serenia's golden eyes flickered toward Elias, who had just stepped inside. "I know," she said simply. Elias understood only half of the words, but he caught the tone. The tension, the unease. He stepped forward. Something's coming, isn't it? Kalen frowned. He learns quickly. Serenia nodded. Yes, I feel it. There are whispers in the dark. Old enemies. Waiting. Elias crossed his arms. Then don't wait for them. If I've learned anything in battle, it's that the enemy always strikes when you think you're safe. The council fell silent. A foreigner, speaking like a soldier of their own ranks. But Serenia's expression softened, not with doubt, but with recognition. You think, as we do, she said slowly. 2 nights later, the warning proved true. It began with a scream from the outer gates. Elias was asleep in his chamber when the sound cut through the night. Moments later, the clash of steel rang out. He leapt to his feet, grabbing the sidearm he had salvaged from his wreck. It had little power left, but it was better than nothing. He ran to the window, his heart racing. Dark shapes poured from the forest, cloaked in jagged black armor. They moved with unnatural speed, blades glowing with sickly green light. Their eyes shone like coals in the moonlight. Elias's stomach turned. These were not Veyarans. These were something older, something worse. The alarms of the city boomed. Horns sounded across the towers. Warriors leapt to arms, streaming into the courtyards. Serenia herself appeared on the highest balcony, her spear blazing in the firelight. Defend Veyara, her voice thundered. The battle began. Elias rushed into the courtyard, but a guard blocked his way. You must stay back, she shouted. I can fight, Elias snapped. You need every hand you can get. The guard hesitated. His tone carried no fear, only certainty. Finally, she let him pass. Elias sprinted toward his crash site. His pod had been dragged near the city for study. Inside it lay scraps of his starfighter. Mostly wreckage, but enough for him to try something. He tore open a panel, digging through wires and scorched metal. His fingers moved fast, his mind racing with old training. He could not fight these creatures head-on, not like Serenia's warriors. But he could give them an edge. He worked on the thruster core, rerouting its power into the beacon array. The beacon had been useless in the interference-rich skies, but it still carried energy. Enough to make a weapon, enough to make a trap. Meanwhile, Serenia charged into the front lines. Her spear spun like a storm, striking down enemy after enemy. The black-armored raiders hissed as they fell, their bodies vanishing into smoke. But for everyone she struck down, more came. They swarmed like shadows, climbing walls, leaping across bridges, tearing at the city's defenses. Kalen fought at her side, shouting orders to the warriors. Hold the bridges. Protect the queen. The enemy leader revealed herself at last, a tall figure clad in jagged black plates, her helmet shaped like the skull of a beast. In her hand, she carried a blade that seemed alive, its green glow pulsing like a heart. Her voice was low and sharp. The man is ours. He carries what we seek. Give him and we spare your city. Serenia's eyes blazed. You will touch nothing here. The 2 leaders clashed, spear against blade. Sparks lit the night, and the city held its breath. Elias dragged his makeshift device into the courtyard. It looked rough, wires sparking, panels half melted, but he knew it could work. He had turned the beacon into an electromagnetic pulse. If he placed it at the right spot, it could disable the invaders' strange armor, at least for a few moments. He saw Serenia locked in combat with the enemy leader. Their clash shook the very ground. He also saw the raiders swarming toward him. They had found their target. Elias set the device on the stones, his hands shaking. The charge built, lights flickering. The raiders closed in. Come on, he whispered, a blade slashed toward him. He fired his sidearm, the shot barely slowing the attacker. Another came, then another. He fought desperately, dodging, blocking with the butt of his gun. At the last second, the device whined. Elias slammed his hand on the trigger. A burst of energy exploded outward. The raiders screamed as their armor flickered. Their blades dimmed. Some collapsed, stunned. The enemy leader staggered, her glowing weapon shattering like glass under Serenia's next strike. The tide of battle turned. With renewed fury, the Veyaran warriors surged forward. Serenia drove her spear through the enemy leader's chest, the figure vanishing into a cloud of black smoke. The remaining raiders, their armor crippled, fled back into the forests. The city was safe for now. Elias collapsed beside his sparking device, breathing hard. His arm was cut, his uniform torn, but he was alive. Serenia strode toward him, blood on her armor, her golden eyes fierce. She reached down and pulled him to his feet. You fought. she said simply. I survived, Elias replied, wincing. No, Serenia shook her head. You did more. You gave us victory. The warriors around them shouted his name, repeating it like they had in the trials. Elias, Elias! For the first time he realized they were not seeing him as a prize anymore. They were seeing him as one of their own. But in the shadows of the forest, beyond the cheers of victory, another figure watched. A raider who had survived, her armor cracked, her eyes burning with hate. She whispered into a device strapped to her wrist. The human lives. He has power. The queen protects him. But we will return. And when we do, the world of women will burn. The signal vanished into the night sky. And though Vayara celebrated, Elias knew the war was not over. The raiders had tested their strength and failed. But they would not give up. They would come again, stronger, hungrier. And next time, they would not only come for him, they would come for the entire world. That night, as fires burned and songs of victory echoed, Elias sat beside Serenia on the highest balcony. She was silent, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Those things, Elias said softly. What are they? Serenia's jaw tightened. An old enemy. We call them the Vayrith. They came long ago. We thought them gone. But it seems they waited. And they want me, Elias said grimly. Yes. Serenia looked at him, her gaze steady. You are more than you know. They believe your blood carries power. Maybe it is true. Maybe not. But they will not stop. Elias clenched his fists. He had been a soldier long enough to know what that meant. His crash had not only changed this world, it had drawn its enemies out of hiding. Serenia placed a hand on his shoulder. You are not alone. I claimed you to protect you, but now, perhaps it is you who will protect us. Elias met her gaze, the firelight flickering in her golden eyes. For the first time, he did not feel like a stranger on this world. He felt like part of it, and as the night deepened, he made a silent promise. He would not let this world fall. He would not let Serenia fight alone, because humanity's strength was not in standing apart. It was in standing together, and together they would face whatever storm was coming. The city of Vayara had survived the raid, but the air still carried the weight of fear. Burned bridges were rebuilt, towers were repaired, and the wounded were tended. Yet beneath every cheer for survival lay the same question. When will the enemy return? Elias Kane felt it too. Though he had earned the respect of Serenia's warriors, he could not ignore the shadow hanging over the world. The raiders, the Vayrith, would not stop. They had come for him. They would come again. He stood on the highest wall of the city, staring out toward the dark forests where the enemy had vanished. The horizon was calm, but Elias knew better. Calm skies often hid storms. Serenia joined him, clad in dark armor trimmed with silver. Her golden eyes softened as she looked at him. You should rest, Elias shook his head. I've rested enough. They'll be back, Serenia. And when they come, they won't just test your strength. They'll bring everything they have. She was silent for a moment, then spoke with calm certainty. Then we will meet them with everything we have. The following days turned into a storm of preparation. Warriors drilled in the courtyards, their spears and blades flashing beneath the sun. Scouts spread out across the forests, searching for any sign of the Vayrith. Smiths forged new weapons, their forges blazing day and night, but it wasn't enough. The enemy had armor powered by strange energy, weapons no Vayran had ever seen before. Even with Elias's improvised device, they had only won by a thread. Elias knew they needed more. Something stronger. Something different. He spent hours in the ruins of his crashed ship, studying the scorched systems, salvaging anything that could still function. Most of it was beyond repair, but one piece still worked. The memory core. Inside it were records, maps, frequencies, designs. And among those records, Elias found something. An unfinished prototype design for a weapon. A pulse cannon meant to disable enemy ships at short range. It could not be built fully here, but the design gave him an idea. With Vayran crystal power and his human knowledge, they could forge a hybrid weapon strong enough to match the Vayrith. When Elias showed his sketches to Serenia, she studied them with narrowed eyes. You think you can build this here? With your smith's skill and my knowledge, yes, Elias answered. It won't be perfect, but it will be enough. She placed her hand on his shoulder, steady and firm. Then we build. Weeks passed. The city transformed into a fortress. The sound of hammers rang across every district. The pulse weapon slowly took shape. A cannon powered by crystals mounted on a pivot so it could sweep the battlefield. Elias worked alongside the smiths, sweat on his brow, hands raw from labor. He was no longer just a stranger. They called him brother now, sharing food and laughter with him. But not all in Vayara celebrated his presence. One night, Kalen approached Elias in the workshop. The advisor's eyes were sharp. "You've given us strength," Kalen admitted, "but you've also brought danger. Before you came, the Varith were gone. Now they rise again. Tell me, Elias Kane, will this city burn because of you?" Elias froze. The words stung because they carried truth. His crash had drawn the enemy out of hiding. His blood, his existence, was what they hunted. "I don't know," Elias said quietly. "But I know this, if I leave, they'll follow. And your world will fall. If I stay, at least we have a chance." Kalen studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Then do not fail us, human. For if you do, all will be lost." The storm broke sooner than expected. At dawn, the horizon darkened, not with clouds but with shadows. Ships, black, jagged like claws, descended from the sky. The ground trembled as they landed. The Varith had returned, and this time they came in numbers that made the last raid look small. The horns of Vayara thundered across the city. Warriors rushed to the walls, spears raised. Serenia stood at the front, her armor blazing in the morning light. Elias stood beside her, his sidearm at his hip and his heart pounding like a drum. The Varith leader stepped forward, cloaked in dark energy. Her voice carried like thunder. "Give us the man. Give us his blood and we will let your city live." Serenia raised her spear, her voice a blade of steel. "We are Vayarans. We do not bow. We do not surrender." The warriors roared in answer. The battle began. The Varith surged forward like a black tide, their armor glowing with sickly light. Vayaran warriors met them head-on, their cries fierce, their spears flashing. Elias ran to the cannon, the weapon he had built with the smiths. It hummed with crystal power, waiting for its first test. "Come on," he muttered, gripping the controls. The enemy pushed closer. The ground shook with their march. Elias aimed the cannon and fired. A wave of blue energy tore across the battlefield. The front ranks of the Varith stumbled, their armor flickering, their weapons dying. The warriors of Vayara seized the moment, charging with renewed fury. The cannon worked, but the enemy was endless. For every raider that fell, 2 more took its place. In the heart of the battle, Serenia clashed with the Varith leader once more. Their blades sparked like fire, the ground cracking beneath their strikes. "You cannot win," the leader hissed. "The man belongs to us. His blood carries the key. Without him, your world will wither." Serenia's eyes blazed. "He belongs to no one. He chooses his own fate." Their weapons clashed again, echoing like thunder. Elias fired the cannon again and again until its core began to glow dangerously hot. Sparks flew, gears shuddered, but he kept going. Then he heard the shout. A squad of raiders had broken through the lines. They were charging straight toward him. Elias grabbed his sidearm, firing desperately. One fell, then another, but more came. He braced himself, and then Serenia was there, her spear spinning like a storm, cutting the raiders down one by one. She planted herself at his side, eyes fierce. "Together," she said. "Together," Elias answered. The tide of the battle turned again. The Varith leader, wounded by Serenia's strikes, raised her blade high. Energy pulsed through the enemy ranks, a surge of power meant to crush the defenders. Elias saw it. The pulse cannon would not hold much longer, but he had one last choice. He could reroute the entire core, overload it. The blast would cripple every Varith on the battlefield, but it might also take him with it. He looked at Serenia. She was fighting, unstoppable, unyielding. Yet even she could not defeat endless numbers alone. This was it. His final choice. He slammed his hand onto the controls, rerouting the core. The cannon whined, brighter and brighter. Energy built to a roar. "Elias!" Serenia shouted. He met her gaze and smiled faintly. "For all of us." The cannon exploded in a wave of blinding light. When the light faded, silence fell. The battlefield was covered in smoke. The Varith lay scattered, their armor shattered, their bodies dissolving into ash. The leader was gone, destroyed by the surge, and at the center of it all stood Elias, burned, bruised, but alive. The core had thrown him across the stones, but he had survived. Serenia rushed to him, dropping her spear and catching him in her arms. Relief broke through her fierce eyes. "You fool," she whispered. "You could have died." Elias coughed, managing a weak grin. "Wouldn't be the first time. But at least it was worth it." The warriors of Vayara gathered around, their voices rising in a cheer that shook the skies. "Victory! Victory!" The city had survived. Days later, peace returned, though scars of the battle remained. The walls were rebuilt, the fires quenched, but the memory of the storm lived on. Elias walked the streets, greeted not as a stranger but as a hero. Children ran to him, warriors clasped his hand, and elders bowed their heads in respect. On the highest balcony, Serenia stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "The Varith are broken," she said, "but not destroyed. They will return one day." Elias nodded. "Then we'll be ready together." She looked at him, her golden eyes steady. "You came from the stars. You could still seek them. Do you wish to leave?" Elias thought of Earth, of the life he had lost, of the stars that had carried him here. Then he looked at Serenia, at the warriors, at the city that had claimed him. "No," he said softly. "This is my place now, my fight. My home." Serenia smiled faintly, the undefeated queen showing for once a glimpse of warmth. "Then you are not just claimed," she said. "You are chosen." Together they looked out at the horizon, the city alive with light behind them. The war was not over. The stars still held enemies, dangers yet unseen, but Elias Kane had made his choice. He would stand with this world. He would fight for it, and when the next storm came, humanity's strength would shine again, not alone, but hand in hand with those who had claimed him, and whom he had chosen in return.